Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am delighted to be joined today with my guest. Amazingly, the first time we're meeting in person after nearly 10 years of friendship back and forth. Mr. Awesome, BenCoomber, welcome to the podcast.
Mate, great to see you.
Crazy that it's been this long. Like, I think 2016 was the first time we started chatting and back and forth with podcasts, and we've done webinars together. We chat back and forth in DM, first time meeting. So, mate, long overdue.
Yes.
Ben, we're going to talk about a couple of different topics. I mentioned in the introduction, a lot of those will have listened to the previous episodes you've been on. You're a best-selling author, multi-award winning coach, a founder of aweomesupps, which we have for those of you watching on YouTube in the background here. We put the link in the description for people to check out at the back of the podcast. But we're going to talk about a few different things today. We're going to start on processed foods, ultra-processed foods, because this is a topic that is trending quite heavily on social media in particular at the minute. And it's one of the areas that I feel a common sense approach needs to be taken. And one of the things that you do beautifully is you break things down from that common sense approach. Talk to us a little bit about processed food, ultra processed food, because I remember one of your videos going viral about a year and a half ago. I think it was to do with Ready Brek and explaining and breaking down the ingredients in it, because people are like, that's really processed crap and rubbish. And you're like, well, actually, from a nutritional standpoint, this is what it is. Talk to us a little bit about, you can use that even video if you want as a kind of jumping off point, about ultra-processed food, processed food, and some of the misinformation there is out there around it.
Yeah, so with processed food, we have this term processed, and you'll walk around the supermarket and you'll pick up a thing, it'll be in a box or it'll be in a packet, and the brain will instantly go, oh, well, it's kind of processed because it's in a box. And because if we move away from the veg aisle, we move away from the meat aisle, the dairy aisle, the kind of habitually known healthy foods, we're then in this unknown land of like multiple ingredients equals processed. But if we think about it, processed means something has been through a process. Now that process can include one step in the process, or it can include 30, it can include 3 ingredients, or it can include 300 ingredients. So when we sort of say our processed food is bad, it's kind of then just wide open to be like, what on earth does that actually mean? So when you've got this kind of ultra processed food, then now sort of people are having different opinions around what that means. Okay, what classifies an ultra processed food? What, is processed? When we look at it from a common sense perspective, if you just zoom out and go, why are we actually analysing this? Why is this actually a problem? Because if you and me go and eat 80, 90% real food, fruits, vegetables, meat, nuts, pulses, dairy, whether we eat a little bit of ice cream, whether we eat a little bit of Haribo or whatever, it's pretty much negligible because we're doing all of the right things. And in the world of nutrition, we have this obsession with don't do this. It's almost don'ts. What about do's? We're all getting worried about, seed oils, this kind of additive or this chemical. And it's like, how about we move away from that and just focus on what we should be doing? Okay, what we should be doing is eating real foods, going to bed on time, hydrate, like all really simple stuff. And quite often when we talk about nutrition, you kind of shouldn't, because it almost feels like it should be bad. But the Netflix documentary, I think it's called How to Live to Your 100, and it's analysed all the blue zones.
I've watched that, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, this is actually a really good program, because they've gone all around the world, all these different cultures, and they've basically said, you need social connection, you need to move, you need to keep your brain active, you need to eat real foods. And you went into the kitchens of all these cultures, and they're like, they're eating pastas, fruit and vegetables, moderate amount of animal protein. Some cultures, no animal protein, fine, be more intelligent. And it's like, that was really refreshing, because you kind of look at it and go, it really is that simple. But the problem is we live in a world where there's so much on the table now. Like, you walk around the supermarket and there's just bazillions of different things, and we're having to kind of like navigate that. So actually, if we can apply the filter of what should I be doing for 80, 90% of the time, I really think this kind of like 10 to 20% is almost irrelevant, because your body has all the vital nutrients it needs. Now, if you're eating processed food, whatever that means, 50, 60% of your diet, that's a problem. Like, and then we can kind of break down, if you want, the different types of foods, how processed this is. But, if you look at a packet of food, and you turn it over and it's like, and the ready breck example is a good one. So I did this video and people were like, I can't believe you use ready breck. And I'm like, hang on a second. Ready breck is oats. There was oat flour in it and there was vitamins. I'm like, but because you saw it in a box with branding on it, and yes, we can argue that steel cut rolled oats is better, but if someone doesn't like that or whatever, then like it's a good next step. And in this example, I use it in my kids' porridge to make it like a bit creamier, the texture. So I use about 80% oats and then 20% ready breck to kind of make it more palatable for them. And yeah, people lost their mind. And I'm like, do you know what process means for yourself? Because in these conversations with nutrition, we have to define terms. If we sit down and have a debate right now about processed foods, the thing that we should probably do first is, Brian, what's your interpretation of processed food? Ben, what's your interpretation of processed food? Because if we don't do that, we might be just arguing null points because we haven't actually come to a consensus in the middle. And I think it's the same with like seed oils right now. Everyone's losing their mind on the internet about seed oils. And it's like, if you don't eat highly manufactured, heavily processed food, so, it's very far removed from its original form, you're probably not going to be consuming that much seed oils. And for 30 plus years in the world of nutrition, we have been saying probably not a good idea to cook with sunflower oil because it oxidizes very quickly. You should probably cook with olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, butter. Like, we've been saying that for a long time. It's not new information. So we need to really zoom out and focus on the do's and not the don'ts, in my opinion.
Love that. I have a few notes there that I want to go through. And I just want to talk on the blue zones. Something that was so disheartening for me when I started to read more on this topic was the amount of the genetic component to living to 100. That's why I say in books, live to my 97-year-old rule. I'm like, because I don't think I have the genetics to get to 100. So it's an inside little line for people listening. I think about with processed foods, that 80-20 rule, that 90-10 is such a massive part. And the term that I regularly use is satisficing versus optimizing. Like if you're an Olympian, you're a bodybuilder, you're a bikini athlete, you're a professional athlete, yeah, you probably need to go more 99-1. Like you're trying to perform at the elite of the elite. If you're trying to lose body fat, lose weight, tone up, feel better, have a nice balance in terms of your social connections, 80-20 is going to be perfect. It's actually going to be a really sustainable plan for the majority of people. And I want to ask, because the danger in the dose is what I take away from that. And I agree completely. We sing from very similar hymn sheets here. But from your perspective, and I've thought about this, I don't actually have an answer yet, so I might just steal yours if it works, is the seed oil conversation. And yes, we have known this for years. Like I've done, the old BTN Academy, I've done lots of different nutritional certs over the years. And this isn't new information on the dangers of seed oils, or dangers, I'm using the word, the negative potential health impacts of over-consuming those foods. Not as sexy as fucking just saying it's dangerous, but that's the accurate term. Why do you think it's starting to trend now? And my viewpoint, without me having thought too deeply on it, is that things regularly trend in nutrition. Same as training now. I'm on the High Rocks bandwagon at the minute, and I was on the CrossFit bandwagon when it was out, and I was on the fitness model and physique competitor bandwagon when it was out. I did all of those things. So I'm a bandwagon jumper for fitness. I can't talk pot kettle here. But things tend to trend.
They do,
and this seems to be the nutritional trend. What's your viewpoint on why it's seed oils in particular now? Because this is something that, and I don't want to sound like an absolute twat, as two people that live and work and we're practitioners in this space. So it's very obvious for us, and I don't want to have a curse of knowledge here for the everyday person that this is new. But why do you think this in particular is trending at the minute? Have you thought much on that?
I think it's come from America, where the state of health is a lot worse and the use of seed oils is a lot higher in their foods. Like if you compare packet to packet, there are a lot more seed oils in American foods. There's a lot more of a culture around consuming a lot more packaged and, we'll say highly processed foods. And hopefully people kind of get what we're saying from the original frame here. And because the ill state of health in America is so bad, and a lot of these states are coming from a pro-inflammatory position, we're then looking at foods that create a pro-inflammatory environment. And then we're going, right, seed oils, they're high in omega-6, they highly oxidize. And we're seeing, because you can do something called an omega-3 index test. And that basically looks at the omega-3 ratio compared to omega-6 in your blood. And it's meant to be a certain amount. And for most people, it's like 15 to 20 times higher than it kind of should be. And part of that is because of the high consumption of omega-6 foods. But a bigger part of that picture is the very low consumption of omega-3 rich foods. So when the government say, oh, you should be eating 2 portions of oily fish a week, it's kind of more 4 to 5 portions of oily fish a week to get enough omega-3 to have a healthy index. That means your pro and anti-inflammatory environment is kind of correct, and you're having basically a balanced environment. Because inflammation isn't bad per se. Chronic inflammation over a chronic period of time is bad.
We'll get on to supplementation later, because omega-3 is definitely one I want to touch on, and we've got some of the supplements here and we're going to unpack that as we go through, and just some of the things that people need to understand with subjects like proprietary blends, etc. But I don't know if I ever told you the story, Ben. When I was in the States in 2016, one of my first business mentors, who was married to one of my best friends at the time, an absolute genius, ran a multiple 7-figure health business, and was just an eye-opening experience to listen to her talk about business. I remember she was on a big health kick. That was her business. And her telling me, make sure you're eating grass-fed beef. And I was like, oh my God, grass-fed beef. I was like, yeah, Jesus. And she was explaining that, the nutrients is that the cows are eating the grass. And, if they're farmed and they're not getting the right food, you're going to be putting all those hormones and crap into your body. And I came home in 2016. Bear in mind, I'm a country boy living in a farm in the west of Ireland. I went into my butcher. I'm so embarrassed to even admit this probably. I
know what's coming.
I went into my butcher and he gave me beef, and I was like, do you mind if I ask, is it grass-fed beef? And he looked at me and he goes, what the fuck else would it be eaten? I felt like such an idiot asking that question. And then I was like, US and Ireland are very different countries.
Yeah.
Ireland, UK, even EU regulations, the glyphosate in different meals when it comes to, wheat-based products, etc. The soil, it's a completely different environment. So if you're listening in the US, you have to be more aware of this. If you're listening in Ireland and the UK and you're consuming information from the US, it's not misinformation per se. It's just misattributed based on the country.
Yeah.
So just bear that in mind. Which brings me on to something that I want to touch on. Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. You have a great post on social about some of the things, and I'm a big fan. Like I don't follow his podcast in particular because I'm not his market for that. But I think what he does, anyone that's doing their thing, living life on their terms, I'm all for go do you. And you did a great letter to Stephen Bartlett, which went very viral. And what I loved about it at the time was people were really shitting on him for bringing on health or fitness people who were providing possibly misinformation. I think that's probably the right term, either because the questioning wasn't right on the podcast or the clip that went up was out of context. And again, marketing 101, make people angry. It's good for social engagement.
Yeah.
But it was a great letter explaining the importance of providing the right information. Talk to us a little bit about misinformation online and what people should be looking for when they're listening to podcasts, or probably more accurate, social media, because it's bite-sized, out of context chunks that you can get. And a small bit of information can be really dangerous, especially without the underlying context, if it's nutritional. Talk to us a little bit, and it doesn't have to be about Stephen in particular or Diary CEO or anybody in particular, but about misinformation online and people consuming it from the place it was of origin and where it's been researched, so that it's not just somebody having an opinion, if that makes sense.
Misinformation online is not something that's going to go away. So we have to get a better filter and a better handle on it. The biggest thing that I advise people on to have a good filter is look at the language someone is using when they speak. So if I say to you, Brian, it's not a great idea to eat processed foods. These are the reasons, blah, blah, blah. And then I might give like a little bit of context, and then I might cite some research. Now, what I've done is I've said something quite openly. I've given a little bit of context. I've added a little bit of opinion, but I've framed it as opinion. And then I've left the audience to then go and make kind of an opinion. But if I sit here and say, Brian, no one should be eating processed food. It's full of chemicals. It's full of this. It's full of that. That is the biggest red flag for me, because that person is speaking from a place of bias. They've probably cherry picked certain bits of research. There's no context to that phrase. Like, for a start, what does processed food mean? And without the context, without the kind of, these are the terms that we're operating within, the listener's then thinking, oh, my view of processed food is X. This person has a very strong opinion. They're authoritative. They've got letters after their name. So everyone goes, oh God. And then people act out of fear. So if someone you're listening to drives a behavior out of you from a place of fear, that's another red flag as well, because you're then like, you're in this panic state. But if you're deciding to take action out of information and inspiration, that's a sign that someone's done their job well in delivery of the information, because they've outlined the research, they've given you some context, and they've made you feel safe and informed about the action and decision that you might then make to improve your quality of life, rather than making you feel like scared and fearful, like, oh, I need to go and do this thing because I will get ill, or I will get unhappy, or whatever. So language is the biggest red flag for me.
Do you think, because they always say in marketing, it's actually something that I agree with but don't apply, that you should sell people on their fear? And it used to give me the business ick. I remember going to seminars and they'd be talking about sales calls for clients, and they're like, make them afraid. Make them afraid to not work with you. And then they, get their credit card and sign them up. And I'm like, oh, that's giving me the ick. I was like, please, I'm in the wrong room. I'm in the wrong seminar room here. And, I'm a believer in self from a place of service. Like, try and serve people in a meaningful way. And again, some people will like that. Some people won't like it. That's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion on it. But selling from fear or creating fear and emotional response, this, your hippocampus, your amygdala in your brain are very close together. So if you can create fear or you can storytell, you're going to store that memory easier and people are going to recall it because it's there. It's literally the emotional response is triggered and fear is a very strong one. Do you think the reason that there's a lot of people promoting that fear online, do you think it's, without being a tinfoil hat, that it's a hidden agenda, or it's, people genuinely believe this? And I want to believe that people who are promoting this message of don't eat processed foods, don't eat seed oils, it's going to kill you, are doing it from a place of hopefully service. They don't want people to get sick. They don't want people to be ill, but they're just so attached to the research. What's your opinion on that? Again, I know I'm putting a positive spin and probably trying to look at the best in people, but what's your opinion on that, having seen so much of it over the years?
I'm the same. I always want to see the best in people, want to come from a place of like love and looking at the best in an individual. The problem is we're humans, we're fallible, we have biases, we have personal experiences that can drive you to overlook certain things. So when I was younger, in my 20s, in fitness, had the podcast, I was coming from a place of service. I wanted to help, but also I was coming from a place of I wanted to be validated. I wanted to be respected. And actually those things can kind of cloud your judgment, because you will go after or say the things that you think will get you more notoriety, etc. So actually some of these people that are being very bold online and really kind of, doing the clickbait stuff, they're the people that I would say are coming from a place of not enough. And they're not truly coming from a place of service from the individual, because they're trying to... They're clouding the boundaries because they know it will provide for something innately within them. And I've done that, and I recognize that behavior in me as a younger man. And hopefully I've kind of washed myself of those kind of dirty habits. And unfortunately, we as the consumer just have to try and kind of, find, the gold, in the soil sort of thing. And that's, again, looking at what people are saying, why they're saying from it. Are they coming from an authentic place? Do they really feel like they're thinking about you as the audience, or rather than just themselves and the message? And I think if we can do that, we can have a pretty good job at filtering out, because there's so many great people online. And I got put off being online for quite a while. I got quite sort of angry about it, and I went kind of like anti-social media, and I kind of stood back from it probably about 5 to 6 months ago. And I was like, no, actually, I just need to reset where I'm at with social media. I need to unfollow a load of the people that don't serve me anymore. And I just need to have a really strong filter. And now my social media is kind of beautiful. I absolutely love it, because I've curated the people that I want to learn from. And there is a lot of great, genuine, acting from a place of service people out there. And I genuinely enjoy kind of, my 20 minutes on social media now. But we just have to have a strong filter to be able to do that?
You might not be able to answer this because it's probably similar to my feed, because I curate heavily and I actually weirdly don't spend that much time on social media now outside of replying to my messages, my audience, commenting back to people who've messaged me and creating content. I've got quite a healthy relationship with social media now, less so in 2017, 2018. This actually took me quite a while to build. But something that's trending at the minute, and I'm asking because I get asked about this all the time, although it never shows up on my feed, is people going into food stores, grocery stores, and picking out and going, don't eat this, this is terrible. Again, you're probably similar to me. I have never seen any of those because I have those accounts muted if they're people I know, or I'm not following those accounts and I don't engage with that. But I get asked probably 4 or 5 times a week on just people sending on screenshots of, oh, so-and-so was in the grocery store. They said this is terrible, full of chemicals, etc. What are your opinions?
It's a very effective way to get noticed online by holding up, here's Ready Breck, like don't eat it, because it's totally relatable because everyone walks into a supermarket, or most people, to get their food. People are then going, oh, I buy that food, oh dear. And it's totally relatable. And then people are like, well, I know that my mum or my friend or my dad or whatever use this food. So then they're sending it to their dad, and then it kind of, it ripples really, really fast. So it's a very, very good and clever way to get noticed. The problem is you're making people scared to buy food. And quite often you're not getting the full context behind it. Maybe there's an agenda. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes there is not great food out there, or there are better alternatives.
Yeah, I love that when people are like, don't eat this, eat that. I quite like that this is higher nutrient value, a bag of Doritos versus, your kale chips, for example.
Yeah, totally. And that's good because that's informative. That's helpful. It's not coming from a place of fear. It's just, this is a better way of doing things. Just like this is a better way to train as opposed to this, because you might get a better outcome. So I'm all for that. But like with social media, when things get clicks and views and people see that, then more people will get on that kind of train, and there we go. But it's relatable.
And there's an element of nearly copycat syndrome, because there's an availability bias that if you're somebody that's creating and you can't pop off and get people to like and comment and go viral, you're going to see the viral clips and potentially copy, and then it becomes this nearly infestation of this style of content that's being created because it's going viral and it's very relatable. And for those listening, it's not to say there's not value in that. Like we've said, there's definitely a good way to do this, and you're probably potentially following accounts that do that, and maybe they're doing it really well. But just be mindful. Be mindful of what information is being given. And if this is just a pure scare tactic, pure fear, and just driving that fear, that's probably not something you want on your algorithm or your feed. I want to talk about supplementation, because when we think of processed foods and when we think of whole foods in general, my philosophy for a very long time, which is similar to you, is supplement what you're missing in your nutrition. That's evolved slightly over the years, because I always thought, look, if you're clearly deficient in vitamin C, take vitamin C. Clearly deficient in vitamin D, take vitamin D. But over the years, the food quality isn't as high as it was 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. There's a lot of research being done around this in terms of just the nutrient density in the soil, etc. So supplements now, I would argue, play a more important role than they ever have. Can you talk to us about proprietary blends in supplements? Because we've got a few here. I've got Awesome Sleep, I've got Awesome Hydrate, Awesome Power with creatine and beta-alanine over here. All supplements I'm going to be using over the next few weeks, so I'll keep you posted on how they go. And because you put a lot of work into this in terms of the quality of the ingredients, and something that not everyone knows, and there's different supplements I use, different brands that I love, and other ones that I'm like, oh, they're wrapped around in things like proprietary blends. A lot of people don't have understanding around, firstly, what a proprietary blend is and the quality. So AG1 is the one I've seen you talk about. And I mixed opinions on AG1. I've used it. I like it. I think it's a little bit expensive for what you get. Probably a bit of an understatement, but I think it's fine, personally. But there's more affordable ways for the average person. I think that's fine if you're happy to have a beautiful bag, the cool shakers that come with it, and the subscription model, and that suits your lifestyle. By all means, go for it. All for it. You could definitely be taken a lot worse. But there are other really high quality brands. We've got a few of them here with the awesome supplements in terms of what people can use. Talk to us a little bit about what people need to know about supplements, proprietary blends, and just potentially filling in gaps that they're not getting in their nutrition?
So a proprietary blend is where you can have a group of ingredients, so let's say 7 ingredients, and they're focused around the outcome of getting better focus. What they can say is, here's the 7 ingredients, but you don't have the listing of the volume of that ingredient. So if it's, for example, got L-theanine in it, it might not say 100 or 200 or 300 milligrams. It just says L-theanine. Now, the problem with that is you don't know whether it's 1 milligram of L-theanine or 1,000. And that has a huge impact, because what that allows me to do as a company is say, there's all these ingredients in it, but maybe we've put in such little of that ingredient in it that it's not actually got an effective dose. And then you've got kind of loads of, filler ingredients that just kind of make up the weight of the bag. And the dose is what is going to give you ultimately the performance. So if a company is not willing to disclose that, then what else are they doing that's not right? And for me, that's the biggest problem. Like, I'm not going to hide anything from my customers. I want full transparency about everything that we do. How am I going to build a relationship with you based on trust if I'm not willing to say this is exactly what is in my product? So it's way more of an American thing. You don't often see it in the UK as much, but there are a lot of US brands in the UK just through popularity, etc. So as soon as you see proprietary blend, I would just run away, because you don't know what's in it. And I've contacted companies that have had proprietary blends and be like, please, can you tell me what's in the product? And they're like, no, sorry, it's a proprietary blend. I'm like, great, thank you. I now don't have confidence in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. In terms of supplements, the big problem we have with the micronutrient argument, because I totally agree with you in that it would be amazing if you and me could do a real simple test, and I can imagine we'll wear chips on our arm in the future that will be analysing our blood every minute of every day. And we'll wake up in the morning and an app on our phone would say, oh, you're a bit low in these 3 nutrients today. And you'll take something that pops out of a 3D printer. This is 20 or 30 years in the future stuff, but you'll be constantly optimizing on base where your diet is, what your stress is, all that kind of stuff. We don't live in that world. What we can do is we can take tests. So you and me can spend 180 quid, get our blood analysed, and then we can go away and piece things together. The issue with that is it's then just a snapshot. You could change your nutrition. You could go through a high period of stress. You could start training for a high rocks and start burning through way more magnesium than you were, 2 weeks ago. So what I generally tell people is say, let's look at the mean data. It is mean, don't get me wrong, but we know that most people are deficient in vitamin D. A large percentage of people are deficient in magnesium. A larger percentage of people are deficient in magnesium if they are high exercisers, because magnesium has a major role in the ATP energy cycle. Then there's quite a lot of people that are deficient in iron, especially if you have quite a specialist diet or you eat quite a low meat diet, etc. So what we can say is, because we know this, you can supplement in this way. Now, you can go away and piece it all together. What we did with our product Awesome Defense is we said, let's look at all the research. Let's look at what everyone's deficient in and basically make sure they are optimal on all of those levels. So we've got the research optimal dose of vitamin D and magnesium, etc. So we kind of call it an insurance policy. Now, that means it's a touch more expensive in a way of getting a cheaper multi-nutrient, but it's still cheaper than getting a high quality vitamin D, a high quality magnesium, a high quality iron, because we've put it all into one product. So you can go about it different ways, but this is where we have to trust in science and the current science that exists. And it's pretty, I feel, unequivocal in many respects of what we kind of need, but it is also going to be context dependent. So you and me, probably going to be quite different because we eat really well. We really invest in it. We sleep well. Many other people don't. They're not eating, 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. I would argue it needs to be 8 to 10. And that increases the need for something potentially like a multi-nutrient and omega-3 again. So you have to always look at the person, their lifestyle, what they're doing, and also what they're trying to achieve.
What's your favorite supplement? You've got the creatine and beta-alanine, Awesome Power, which I can see in my eye line here. And I'm a huge fan of both of those ingredients. I regularly use them pre-training in my own kind of pre-made workout in terms of the drink that I make. What's your personal favorite? Again, this is so biased based on what applies to you. Is it the defense? Is it the sleep? Is it the hydrate? Which one do you like the most yourself personally?
Wow, that's a bit hard. It's like, pick your favorite child.
yeah. Again, putting you right in the chopping block here.
Probably the Defense and Omega, purely because, and this comes to the conversation of people. If people said to me, I don't have a lot of money, what supplement should I get? And I'm usually just focus on health, because that's your baseline. So make sure all your micronutrients and all your fats are in good order, and then kind of, the rest will sort itself out a little bit more. So I'm erring on the side of like health, and then everything else on top is kind of like an added bonus.
I'm going to echo that completely, because I've actually had a couple of clients that I've worked with who will be like, oh, I'm taking ashwagandha. That's the really popular one right now. A great supplement.
Good data on it as well.
Good data on it.
There's a new piece of research that came out that showed, it was a very robust study, that on average people experienced a 47 to 77% perceived reduction in stress, reduction in insomnia, and something else. And I was like, that's good data.
Like it's a very, very solid adaptogen. But I'm going to ask the question then, because just to make sure, because we actually might have different opinions on this, because the client I'm thinking of was grossly under eating nutrient dense foods, was very obviously deficient in vitamin D when we got our blood levels marked. And she's like, well, I'm taking ashwagandha. And the argument I put to her, and feel free to poke holes in how I approach this, was you need to cover your bases.
Oh, always.
I was like, you've got your health markers here. You need your nutrients from your food. Like, you're vitamin D deficient. Like, your ashwagandha is an amazing supplement, but it's throwing a cup of water on a burning building. I was like, you need to fire hose the shit out of that, and then throw the cup at the top when everything else is done. What's your opinion on that in terms of covering your bases versus following the quote unquote, not trendy, because trendy can feel like, it's bad. Trendy just means it's popular right now. And ashwagandha, as you mentioned, is robust studies, it's popular for a reason. But I would still argue it's trendy as opposed to a foundational supplement for people, because it can feel like it's papering over cracks. What's your thought on following the trendy supplement versus covering your bases?
Foundations will always be a winner. Problem is they're unsexy, they take consistency, they don't allow people to have the flexibility and freedom that they want, which is go out and eat whatever they want and kind of drink and stuff. Like, the foundations of health, you can't argue it. You come back to that documentary that we talked about, How to Live Till 100, everyone's sleeping well and eating well and exercising and having social connection. So, like, I run a supplement company. I'm a fan of supplements, but I'm never, ever going to ignore the foundations of what we need to do as humans to keep us healthy and well. Because the reality is we can be happy and healthy without supplements. But there's also the reality that maybe some supplements could make us more optimal or improve our training, which we can, and we know that. So, you can't run away from the basics. And if not, it will catch you out at some point. Like, I was a very healthy guy, ate well, trained well. I got to 34 and I was fucked. And that's purely because I didn't manage my stress. I burnt out, got long COVID, and I spent many years like absolutely ill because I didn't focus on the pillar, which is the overall stress load that I was putting myself under, and I broke. And that's a foundation. No supplement was going to save me from that situation.
Breakdown to breakthrough. A very hard, sharp left turn here. Humans healthy and well, supplements cover your base, nutrition covers your base. If you want to live to 100, you unfortunately need genetics potentially to get to 100, as
let's try to fight.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I'm going to use all those health markers you talked in terms of waking up with the app and be like, you're low in vitamin D today, take more vitamin D. Plant medicine. Connection. Alignment. My 3 words are peace, love, and service. They're my 3 mantras. That's what ayahuasca has given me. It's what plant medicine has given me. It's my North Star in 2025 and beyond.
Nice.
Peace, love, service. Talk to us a little bit about your journey over the last several months, last couple of years, really, actually, if we go from start to finish. Talk to us a little bit about, I won't say the new BenCoomber, because the old one's still there. Same as the old Brian Keane is still there. I'll still go and smash a workout and be like, I'm going to fucking crush my high rocks time. But then I'm going to go home and meditate for half an hour because I need to reconnect with myself and make sure I'm showing up right for the people in my life. That's new. Talk to us about your version.
So before I start, my 4 words are freedom, truth, love, and flow. And that's been formulated from my journey over the last couple of years. So got long COVID, spent a long time being very ill. That then led to having testosterone deficiency, a lot of gut problems. But when I focused on the physical, it just wasn't all making sense. Like I wasn't getting back to full health. And they say in some areas of spirituality, a depression is the start of an awakening for the soul, or a yearning of an awakening for the soul. So if anyone out there is listening to this and you feel low, or you feel depressed, you feel angry, that is your sign to take action, that your heart, that your soul, that your whole being wants change, and you're ready for change, but you're resisting change because you're following an old blueprint, an old model, expectations from your family, what your workforce or partner want you to do, but you are yearning for something different, and you've got to step up, lean into that. And I know it's uncomfortable, but that's what your body wants, and that's the only way you're going to lift yourself out of what that current state is. So I kind of stood back and I was like, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm supplementing. I'm doing all of the physical, and then I just started to really look at the mental and emotional body. And I just happened to go to my massage guy and wanted some massage work, and we were unpacking kind of the last sort of 2-3 years because we hadn't seen each other since COVID. And he was like, you need to go and see this woman. I was like, okay. So he gave me the number, walked out of the massage, phoned her up. She said, I got an appointment in 2 days. I was on the couch and I sat in front of her, and I just remember I can still embody the energy and the place that I was in when I first sat down in front of her. And I sat down in front of her and I could feel her presence, and I felt totally emasculated. I felt so weak, so powerless, so afraid as well of what was going to happen, but also excited. And we did this session, and long story short, she is a sort of an energetic practitioner. She uses things like trauma release therapy, Reiki, sound healing, all this kind of stuff. And I've now had 23 sessions with her, but the session I had with her was the start of the journey. It was the start of me seeing what the body is really capable of, and what the human body can really be when you start to harmonize the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the energy body. And you start to then wake up the spirit, which is self, which is us, which is our inner knowing, which is our heart, which is our truth. So since then, the journey has been a lot of stuff, and I kind of have taken my entrepreneurial energy and mindset into it. And I'll tell you what, I've burnt myself out, periodically from kind of going so hard at this, because working through difficult emotions and mindsets that are not serving you anymore is hard. It's not easy. Like I've had sessions where I've come out and for 5 days I've just been like knackered, where you're just trying to recalibrate after that kind of experience. It's deep. And that's why this work is hard, and a lot of people avoid it, because you've got to look at the mirror of self, which is difficult. You've got to look at all of that programming that your parents bestowed upon you, what happened between growing up. And by the way, this is no shade on my background or anyone's background. Like we don't view this through the lens of hatred or anger or frustration. We have to view it from a place of love. My parents acted from a place of love. They did what they thought was best for me at the time. Unfortunately, my childlike self viewed some of the things that they did as, we do not love you. That is my interpretation. That's how trauma is formalized, because it is our interpretation of a situation, and we create a memory imprint, and then that stores itself in the body, and then that kind of creates behavior and character in the future. So throughout this journey, the sessions kind of led me into getting into meditation in a big way. I'd started to use meditation and yoga nidra as part of my long COVID recovery, because my central nervous system was stuck on fight or flight, and I needed to try and get it out of it. And then I started breath work. I went to a breath work workshop, Wim Hof breathwork workshop, to kind of really get into it, to really master it. And I was just like, this blew my mind. Like when you can get your body into a state with DMT and you've got an intention and you're going through a breath session, it just blew my mind.
Yeah, it's like a mild psychedelic, not even a mild, it's like a psychedelic experience when you get it right.
Yeah. And this is why I do it nearly every day, some form of meditative practice. My meditation is a mixture of let's define meditation. Meditation is becoming familiar with or going within. It's for you, it's an opportunity for you to become at one with what's going on inside, or become the observer of what is going on, so you can start to understand it, unpack it, and quite often alter the state. So you might be feeling angry. Going into a meditation might allow you to become familiar with why you're actually feeling angry and start to process that and kind of move through it. So meditation, breath work, a couple of psychedelic experiences, ketamine and magic mushrooms, psilocybin. Not done ayahuasca, not been cool to do it. Don't feel cool to do anything else now, to be honest. The last time I did magic mushrooms, it was just a really pleasurable experience. I was like, oh, this is nice, really visual.
Yeah, mushrooms are amazing.
Yeah.
They're the ayahuasca's the harsh mother plant that she'll fuck you right up.
Yeah.
Mushrooms will give you a nice little it's a pleasant experience. I've done mushrooms a few times.
Yeah. But then I was in a room with 9 other people when I did my last mushroom experience, and I'd say 5 in the room were working through some really dark, heavy stuff. They're quite early on in their journey. There's a couple of people that were working through some rough stuff, and then me and the guy next to me, it was quite pleasurable. It was quite, so it is a tool to very much access and go through.
Intention is everything.
Yeah. The dark stuff, but I don't feel there's any dark stuff left. I feel like I've done all the work, and all of the fear and the pain and the faulty stories I've worked through, and I'm in a state now where I'm blissfully happy. I'm in alignment with my truth. I know who I am. I come from a place of pure kind of love and knowing of self. And it is a difficult journey, but it's the most powerful journey that I've been on. And I can't shut up about it now. I can't not talk about it, because I walk around and there's so many people in pain. There's so many people following someone else's blueprint for their life. And that's really hard to be an observer of. And I view it all from a place of love, but I'd love to be able to walk up, to so many people. And sometimes I do this at music festivals. I walk up to people and I say, by the way, you're enough. Like, exactly as you are, you're enough. Because so many people don't get to hear that from, how we're brought up or whatever. And again, it's no shade on how we've parented through the generations, but we now know that there's a better way to do things. And, with love and respect and care for everyone and their uniqueness, everyone's able to thrive. Everyone is able to thrive, but so few are.
I'm just picturing you coming up to me at a Limp Bizkit concert saying I'm enough in the middle of a mosh pit. I'm like, fuck it, you're enough. I'm enough. Everyone's enough. Fucking smashing off your shoulder.
Not my kind of festival.
Yeah, that's my festival. I do love a mosh pit. There's a mosh pit in heaven, 100%. When I die, like, heaven's a half pipe, but there's definitely a mosh pit in heaven for me. I want to touch on the ketamine, because I haven't experienced ketamine. And very interestingly, and this isn't a call for psychedelics, actually far from it. I think I won't tell anybody what they need to do. I would consider all the alternative modalities like journaling, meditation, breath work first. It's a dipping your toe into the water, learning to remove. For me, meditation is the observer of my thoughts. And I realize that there's Brian Keane, the person, the ego, the attachment, and then there's this observer who's looking in on all these thoughts that are forming in my head, and then I don't have to attach to them, and it creates a space. I think that's why it tends to make you calmer. You learn to respond, not react, because the meditation creates the space between impulse and reaction, and then you're responding because you have time to reflect on it. Even though it might only be a split second, that can be enough to stop you telling someone to go fuck themselves, or doing something that you have to regret later, or that you have to try and put the pieces back together. With ayahuasca, and again, disclaimer, not a call for ayahuasca, but my experience, I've done a separate podcast on this that people can search. My first experience with ayahuasca was very similar to what you said there with the childhood experience, that what ayahuasca gave me in terms of the gift was it allowed me to re-experience things that happened in my childhood as an adult. I was 34 at the time when I did ayahuasca, maybe 33, but I was able to experience things from when I was 6, from when I was 7, from when I was 8, but through a lens of a 34-year-old man. Because when you're 6, 7, 8, as you mentioned, these stories of I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, or these experiences that potentially traumatize you, big T trauma, small T trauma, you don't have the tools as a 6 or a 7-year-old to process those.
Nope.
So what happens is, as you mentioned, it gets stored in the body, and then it becomes this subconscious program that we live our life by. And I love the Carl Jung quote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, you go through life calling it fate. And what it kind of reminded me of the shadow work. And he speaks that the shadow isn't bad, it's just something that you can't see. But I want to touch on the ketamine, because I have no experience with this. What was that process like? This is purely me now scratching my own itch. So apologies for people listening. I don't give a fuck about what happens at ketamine, but I'm super interested. What was that like?
So I had a friend who had been through a medical ketamine journey that is designed to help someone work through kind of PTSD and various things. And psychedelics have been studied quite heavily in pockets of the world around conditions like PTSD and depression and stuff. Anyway, he'd been through this program, and I trusted him enough to recreationally take ketamine in an environment where I felt safe. And I went through, and because I've already done a lot of work up until that point, I knew about intention. I knew about how to put myself in a place that I was going to have a positive experience from it, and I had the confidence to do it. And we scaled up the dose, and essentially I went through a journey, and this was because of the point that I was on in my journey. And I think it's really important to use these tools that we're talking about at the right time in your journey. When we hear about bad things that have happened where people have taken such compounds as ayahuasca, etc., is they have not quite been in the place to really handle something like that. They haven't done a bit of work to kind of know what's going, and all of the stuff that's come up, they've just not been ready for it. And it can induce things like psychosis and stuff. That is a reality that can happen. But I felt very confident that I'd been on that journey for like 2 years already. And I was like, I feel in a really good place to do this. I feel safe that I'm with the right kind of person, and I'm actually in a very safe environment. There was actually a lot of medical people kind of around and stuff. And what it showed me is it opened up a layer of my soul that allowed me to see that I have the capacity to be a free man. And there was quite a few happenings. And when you start to become a more spiritual soul and you start to really listen to what's happening on the inside of you, you really are able to tune into your environment and what's happening for you. And I started to see kind of triggers, and there was this kind of guy, and I kind of met him, and basically the whole experience showed me that our soul is infinite, and that I can choose to be a free man if I'm willing to let go of the beliefs that I hold so close to my heart about myself. And that wasn't all of the layers of me becoming a free man. It was one of the layers. And once you go down this journey, your ego can get in the way, and you can kind of be like, oh, you've completed this bit. You've kind of got rid of that little kind of like daddy layer or whatever. And then, no, it's not, this is another 7 layers.
Fucking onion.
Yeah, it's an onion. And I genuinely feel, and again, this is probably my ego state talking. I really do feel I'm down to a very, very, very small bit of the onion. I've worked through a lot of layers, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done. So that's how it came about. I just sort of had confidence because of a friend.
Can I ask a question which would be very useful for people listening? Because
by the way, I'll just say it's an incredibly out of world experience. Like, you will lose all sense of reality. There was an hour where all I could see was color, light, and all that came into my consciousness at points was the 6 people that are around me that I trusted. They came in. Otherwise, I was, literally in another dimension.
Yeah, I've done Buffalo Oliveras, which is the toad. And that, fuck me, the first time I did that was terrifying. I actually thought I broke my brain. I did it with a shaman in a controlled setting, but it's like a crack pipe. You're smoking this like toad venom in a crack pipe. It's like something from fucking Breaking Bad. And I think I took too much, but I shot off into another dimension. And by the time I came back, it was absolutely nuts. Like, literally coming back. Now the message out of it was incredible. I realized that I didn't come into this world, I came out of it, which was a very powerful message to take through the rest of my life. But I came back and I'm like, I broke my fucking brain. I was like, I'm going to give myself a psychotic break. This was silly, Brian. You're an idiot. Yeah. Ended up working out well. It's, again, all these medicines are tools and they're beautiful experiences, but you need to be really careful with how you approach them. I've had a bad ayahuasca trip. I've done 10 ayahuasca ceremonies over 4 years, and a bad trip it's a bad trip. Like, I can 100% see why people would have psychotic breaks. I remember I had a really bad breakup, and I remember my intention, you can't tell the plant what to do. My intention was, I don't want to be in love anymore. And so I set this intention before my ayahuasca.
That's dark.
It hurt because it just hurt. The breakup hurt. And what it felt like, it was an eternity of someone severing my arm and then it regrowing back and getting resevered. And it went on for what felt like 10,000 years, because it was horrible. I woke up the next day and the people, so it was like, there's like 20 people in a room. There's like 2-3 people either side of me, and they looked at me in the morning. They were like, what the fuck happened to you last night? And I was like, oh, don't start. I was like, don't start. I was like, I really don't want to get into it. Like, it was just that on repeat, like just a horrible experience happening over and over and over and over again. And I got a beautiful message from another guy, Ryan was his name. And he was like, mate, you need to trust and surrender. Like, trust, surrender, receive became my mantra for plant-based medicine. And then once I trusted and surrendered and didn't try and tell the plant what to do, which sounds mad for anyone that hasn't done it, but you don't tell the medicine, you don't tell the psychedelic, you kind of have to go with it.
Yeah,
it became a completely different experience, and I got a massive release. And it wasn't that you need to not love anymore, it was that you need to transcend that love, and it becomes something else. It becomes a lesson. And again, and it has one of the best experiences of my life in terms of what I got from that. And because you need to break down to break through sometimes. Job losses, divorces, breakups, grief, death of loved ones, etc. These are horrible experiences you wouldn't wish on anybody. But plant medicine is a very powerful tool, but proceed with caution, the same as the ketamine. Which brings me on to the last thing I want to ask on. I mentioned shadow work there, and the Carl Jung quote that I butchered earlier was that until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll ruin your life, or it'll run your life and you will call it fate. And I did a lot of Jungian reading during that period of my life when I was working in and out of psychedelics. And for me, it felt like I could see how people get addicted to it, because revealing your shadow, which is just the part of yourself you can't see, i.e. the shit that holds you back, the subconscious programming, etc. I can see why people would want to keep going down the onion layer and just keep pulling and pulling and going and going and going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you, or did you have any version of that? Because I 100% see how people decide to move to Bali and Thailand and drop their business, drop their life, and just go hug a tree for eternity. I can see why psychedelics would lead to that, because there's a peace in letting that go. Yeah. But that's not what I ever wanted. I wanted to be a better dad, a better partner, a better son, a better brother, a better person, and serve people in a meaningful way. Take all the messages from the plants, take all the messages from this work, and then put it back into my life. So it's like Brian Keane 2.0 versus Brian Keane meditating on top of a mountain in Bali somewhere. I don't even know if there's mountains in Bali. It's an island. Maybe there's Indonesia. I don't know. Sorry, Indonesians who are listening.
There's at least some big hills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, big hill. Did you find that was a potential for you, or did that even come into your space at all? Maybe I'm a focus group of one that was just specifically for me, but what was it like for you? Did you find that there was an addictive tendency to keep searching for more and find out who Ben is at his core, but that can come at the risk of losing Ben who helps people with supplements, Ben who helps people with business, Ben who helps people online, family man, etc. Did anything like that happen for you?
So one of the things that people say a lot around doing deep work is that they're afraid that if they do the work, they'll lose their edge. Because
that was me.
Yeah,
that was me.
That was me as well.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel that fear in yourself, but you're like, well, the fear's the driver. Like, I can actually feel that's a very powerful force, but it's a force that leads you in an untruthful way. You're not in alignment with your truth. Now, we said that intention is everything earlier, and it 100% is. So when I first sat down with this lady, Britta, and I said, I sort of sat down for the session, I said to her, I am here to be a better version of myself. Like you said, better father, better husband, better for my clients, better in all manner of ways. It was then her job to navigate what I needed to be better. So I didn't sit down and say like, I'm in pain, I'm depressed, I'm suffering. So I think people that can get caught out is their intention is that I want to get rid of my pain. And actually getting rid of my pain is removing myself from all painful experiences. So I start to do some work and then I'm like, oh, I'm still around these people that I feel are toxic or whatever. So I'm going to move. And then the solution becomes really extreme. But a quote that my friend says a lot, Jody, he says, we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So when you do this work and you change, you see the world differently. So I might see a man walking down the street and he looks angry and he spits on the floor and chucks a can on the floor or whatever. And I could be like, oh, that guy's such a horrible person. He's because I might be a bit angry inside, or I might be a bit of an individual that likes to feel powerful because I wasn't loved enough as a kid and stuff. Or I could look at that man and go, through a lens of love, and be like, I wonder why that guy's angry. Wonder why he's sad. Wonder why he's drinking. Wonder why he feels he needs to spit on the floor. It's a totally different lens, because in this body right now, I feel pure love. I feel pure admiration for everyone. Everyone's got a story. And if I view the world through that lens, you see it completely differently. Mm-hmm. So I was never at risk of that, I don't feel, because I always went into it with the intention of, I just want to be better as a human. Mm-hmm. And that's the journey that I'm on. I'm not trying to run away. I'm just trying to be better. And yeah, Ben 2.0 hasn't lost his edge. In fact, he's got an even bigger edge, because I now act from a place of truth, love, freedom, and flow.
Beautiful, beautiful way to wrap us up. And I agree completely, because I had the same story as you. I'd lose my edge. And ironically, I produce more now with less stress and from that place of love and service. And it did the complete opposite for me. It made me very tuned in and empathetic. And I think I'm able to, I like to hope, but again, releasing expectation. It's not about me and what's happening. You can only show up the way you're supposed to show up, but you're coming from that place of service and you remove a lot of that fear. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. Ben, for those listening, I'm going to link up the supplements. No ayahuasca, ketamine, or mushrooms. Just creatine, beta-alanine, and all the recovery protocols and hydration that you need. For those that want to follow you, is Instagram still the best place? I know you got co-hosting for a new podcast that you're going to start with a bit of priority into, but where do you want to send people, or where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Come find me, Ben Coomber, on social media. If anyone does want to try the supplements, you can use my personal code CEO15. That'll give you 15% off. I've got a book on Amazon, got a podcast, The Awesome Human. And if you want to come say hi, come say hi.
And every 10 bags of Awesome Sleep has some magic mushrooms sprinkled in. So it's a little bonus, like the toys in the bottom of the cereal box when you were a kid. BenCoomber, thank you so much again.
Thank you, man.